What's going on, everybody? Curtis Wilkerson here with Inside Arkansas and the Pod at the Palace, coming back to you once again with another episode of our Arkansas basketball video mailbag, where pretty much you guys ask me a question, whether it's on Twitter, the YouTube comments, hit the DMs, whatever it is. If it's Arkansas basketball related, I respond to it in video format. We've been posting one a day every morning for the better part of a week now, and quite honestly, we got a few more weeks worth of content to churn out there. So keep the questions rolling. Let's see if we can take this thing all the way to the start of basketball season that everybody's really excited about. And let's take a look and see what question we have today. What's up next? There we go. Do you see any players outside the top 8 to 9 NIL guys contributing this year? That comes from Paul Rowland. We love Paul Rowland, big time follower, listener, and we certainly do appreciate you. Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, you mentioned the top 8 to 9 NIL guys. Well, we know that John Calipari made it very clear when he got to Arkansas that he didn't want to have too many mouths to feed. He wanted his 8 to 9 guys, a defined rotation, and that was that. The rest of the guys, he was really trying to fill in those scholarships with depth pieces, developmental pieces, but it was a pretty clear drop-off, a line of delineation there. But like he said in his most recent press conference, hey, we've got our 8 to 9 guys that we handpicked. The rest of these dudes work their way into the rotation, so be it. They're going to have that opportunity to do so. And so who are the candidates who could possibly do that? Well, you mentioned two of them in your tweet to me, in Melo Sanchez and Cashmir Chavis. And I think those would probably be the two that I would pick who have the most realistic possibility of doing so. Melo Sanchez is a really interesting pickup to me. He is a transfer, technically. He played a couple years of Division II basketball at Hawaii Pacific. And what did he do? He shot the crap out of it while he was there. 147 made threes in 2 seasons. He shot at well over 40% as a true freshman. When it comes to volume, percentage, you name it, he was one of the top 3-point shooters in his league in Division II. And we know that it's a big difference. It's a completely different world from Hawaii Pacific to Arkansas. I mean, listen, Fayetteville, Arkansas is a nice place to live, but I mean, we're talking beaches and Hawaii and everything like that. Just kidding. That's not what I'm talking about. But going from Division II basketball to the SEC, right? It's a huge leap. But one of the skills that's probably easily translatable would be shooting and knocking down shots. That the 3-point line is the same distance, right? So if you can get yourself open, get freed up, and get quality looks, you should be able to knock it down no matter where you're at or who it is you're playing against. And so you wonder, is it too big of a leap for him? Is this a guy that could help you out? There are scenarios in the past where we've seen successful D2 to D1 transfer up stories. I mean, last year, Auburn had Chaney Johnson in the rotation. He transferred up from Division II to D1. He averaged 5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game for Auburn last year. Man, you would take that from a guy like Melo Sanchez. That would be a nice get. Derek White just won an NBA title, started his career at Division II. Jalen Wells was such a big-time name in the transfer portal out of Washington State. A lot of Arkansas fans were hitting me up saying, hey, are the Hogs after this guy? It turns out he stayed in the draft, but that was a dude who started his career as a Division II player. So there are examples there, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. How can he crack the floor? Well, one of the question marks for this Arkansas team, or if you're really, nitpicking, it's, do they have enough 3-point shooting? So could there be a situation where they need a zone buster and they can turn to him? Maybe so. But where do you get those opportunities? It's early in the season, right? Whether it's exhibitions or if you look at some of those early season games they have on the schedule, the bye games, right? The Maryland Eastern Shores, the North Carolina A&Ts of the world. If you're beating those teams by 35 with 10 minutes left in the game, are you going to keep playing Nelly Davis? Or are you going to give some other guys some looks and let your main studs stay healthy, get them a little bit of a breather? You're playing the long game here, right? And so who are going to be those next guys up off the bench? I think Melo Sanchez is a really good candidate for that. And then Cashmir Chavis being the other one, I'm intrigued by him. Now, it's not as sexy of a recruit, as sexy of a freshman pickup as your 3 5-star guys. You got a couple of McDonald's All-Americans mixed in there. But he ain't too shabby. He's a top 150 player in his class by at least one of the major recruiting services, a 3-star prospect. He was originally committed to Washington, so he was headed to the Big Ten anyway. He had offers from West Virginia, I think Arizona State, and a couple other high major programs. This is a guy that a lot of high major programs, they identified him as someone who could help them and develop for the future. Nice point guard, scorer, got a good mentality about him. I think he's a pretty solid player. And when I look at him and kind of where he falls into those player rankings, as look at some guys in the past, he's right in line with Joseph Pinion and Barry Dunning. And well, what were those guys for Arkansas? They were kind of in that 9 to 10th man range, and they were both pretty nice players who had their moments, especially, I mean, Pinion, a couple of years ago, Arkansas won a couple SEC games because of him when they called on him to come in and hit some threes. So you've got a talented guy here, an athlete, and, we get spoiled, I think, sometimes with these freshmen where it's like, oh, this is a 5-star player. Oh, he's a McDonald's All-American. Oh, it's a potential one and done. But just because you're not ranked as high doesn't mean you can't play. And as I look at some of these, end of the roster additions that Arkansas made, and Cash Chavis was the very last one. In fact, I don't think he even was on campus at all for the summer session. It's probably here now for the fall semester. But he's probably the most decorated of the group in terms of profiling as a high major Division I basketball player. So yeah, Melo Sanchez, Cashmir Chavis, sure. Jaden Karlet was an interesting one to me. He really flew under the radar. You talk about recruiting rankings, you wouldn't even find a profile on this guy, but you look at his numbers and you see, man, he's about 6'6". He's got some good length, good size on him. Shot 49% from three and 93% from the free throw line as a senior in high school. So maybe this is a deal where Arkansas takes a look at a kid like this and they say, all right, he's flying under the radar, but look at his percentages, look at his numbers, and look at his size and length. This could be somebody that maybe we could develop and play the long game with. Seen a lot of him in practice clips that the U of A has put out over the course of the summer. And so maybe he might be a step behind those guys in terms of immediate opportunity for an impact, but I wonder if he's a guy that they feel like they can develop and get something out of over the course of the next couple years here. So for the most part, yeah, man, like Arkansas is going to be playing with that top 8 to 9. We know that, kind of expected it. Cal told us that would be the case. But when you go with a short bench, what does that mean? Boy, you're only an injury or two away, or an academic deal, or a flu bug going around the team, or foul trouble. You never know on the road in the SEC, right? To being in a situation where you need to call on these guys and have them in there and have them being ready to contribute and be an asset more so than a liability out there. Maybe they'll get some run early and get their feet wet, and we'll see what happens, but it's a fun thing to keep an eye on. And hey, they're all Razorbacks at the end of the day, so we got to be excited and look forward to watching them. So that'll do it for this episode of our Hoop Hogs Video Mailbag series. Make sure that you're following along. We post these about 8 o'clock every morning, and get subscribed over to our YouTube page, Inside Arkansas. Appreciate you guys tapping in as always. Appreciate all the feedback, the interaction, the engagement. It's a lot of fun. Love doing this. Want to continue doing it. Thanks for tapping in. It's been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas. We'll catch